Hey guys, John here with Jim River Gear. Spring's here, and so is fishing season. So I'm going to show you how to turn these wheel weights, scrap lead, into nice jig heads like these. It's going to be a two-part series. First we'll pour the jig heads, and then the second one we'll decorate them, make them pretty. First thing I want to talk about is safety in handling lead. Lead rhymes with dead, and no amount of lead is good for your body. It's bad for adults, and it's worse for kids. When I initially melt this lead down, made from scrap wheel weights, I do it outside because it's just a smoky, stinky mess. Also, do not use battery scrap for your projects. Battery lead is just too nasty. I did some research on it. Just don't use it. I get these wheel weights from local tire shop. So you're going to need to pay attention to whether you're creating dust or fine particles of lead or just handling the lead. Wash your hands. Along with exposure to lead as a contaminant, molten lead is also dangerous. Molten lead is explosive. Any moisture that gets in a pot of molten lead, the expanding steam will cause the lead to explode. That can be sweat, spit, rain, snot, moisture that's on the things that you're putting in the lead pot. You have to be careful with that. You'll at least need eye protection. Going to need gloves, sleeves, and probably leather shoes would be appropriate. I also like to melt my lead when I have control of the environment and the kids aren't around, pets aren't around. Last thing you need is a dog running through, tipping over a hot pot of lead. It's going to go everywhere. It could be a tragedy. I'm not trying to scare you off. I'm just saying if you're going to work with lead, you need to be aware. Google it, do your own research, know what safety precautions to take in order to use it safely. Molten lead is also hot enough to cause combustion, so be aware it can be a fire hazard. Well, I guess we should ask ourselves why we're going to go to all the trouble of making our own lures. Now, I use these quite a bit. This happens to be Cabela's brand, but everybody makes them. They're just bulk jig heads. Buy them in different colors. There it is next to mine. And for a lot of things they work okay, but they're cheap and you don't get something for nothing. And the cheap part about them is these hooks. These hooks they make them with are not very durable. They're kind of soft. And you find yourself after 2 or 3 fish hit, you lose a few fish and you have to get technical and check the end of the hook, and you realize that, oh, it just rolled over and you didn't even hit a rock or anything. And that's just because these hooks are soft. So probably the main reason, besides having control of our colors, making our own jig heads lets us use a much higher quality hook. Alright guys, we're going to go through the equipment you need to do your casting. You need a heat source. In my case, I'm going to use my 1980s Peak 1 camp stove. Works pretty good for this. You're going to need some kind of a melting pot. This one is a RCBS Reloaders Bullet Casters melting pot. Here's some of our scrap lead. We're using wheel weights. Like I said, don't use battery lead. We need a can to put our scraps in, so we're skimming chunks and slag off put it in the can. We got this muffin tin to put leftover lead, or if we want to work our lead up ahead of time. These make nice little ingots. You can just pour it in there. I use this box to hold almost all my sinker casting paraphernalia. It kind of contains the lead contamination in there. Way to light it. You need ladles to pour the lead. This is a large ladle of unknown origin. I think I got it at a rummage sale or something. It works nice for big sinkers. For smaller sinkers and bullets, I got this little one, and I believe this is like a RCBS or possibly came from Lyman, another reloading tool. Spoon for skimming. Once something's used for your lead projects, you just dedicate it to that. You never use your utensils and things for food again. Here's a mold made by Do It. It's called the Shad Head Jig, model SHB-5-A. And it's smoked. The smoke helps. And it goes from 1/4 ounce to 1 ounce. Sorry. And hook size is 1/0 to 5/0. That's the one we're going to be using for this project. This is a big sinker mold that I use for catfishing. It goes from 3 ounces to 4 to 5. And this one makes various sizes of walking sinkers, they're called. Walking sinker model WS-10-A. This big sinkers was called Flat Bank Sinker, model FLB-3-L. I believe I bought all these sinker molds from Barlow's Tackle. You can get them in lots of places, but Barlow's Tackle seems to have every model made. But other companies have them too. We're going to be using these hooks for the smallest, the 1/4 ounce sinker, or a 1/4 ounce jig. They're 1/0 Eagle Claw hooks. I believe I got these from Bass Pro. Alright guys, well the wind won and I had to move into the shop, but I did get a pot of lead with all the junk cleaned out of it, so it's not smoking and nasty right now. I'm showing you again my mold that I smoked, and I don't know if I said before, but the reason you smoke the mold is to help it release the parts, and the parts also fill out the mold better. Okay? These molds have to be fairly hot to work at all, so I'm going to just set it on top of the pot and preheat it here. And carefully just let some of the heat that's melting the lead, also the waste heat's going to warm up my mold. And I'll just turn it, you know, every once in a while. I don't let it all heat up on the same side. And that can be happening while your mold is, or while your lead's coming up to temperature. Done one. All I got is my birthday candle. I got my molds nice and clean and dry. I've warmed them up. Just need a little smoke in this cavity. You take a look. Doesn't look like you quite got it all. Move forward with this here. We got our mold fairly hot. My lead's been sitting here cooking for a while. What I'm going to do now is warm up my ladle. Everything has to be hot. As soon as I stick my ladle in, it just freezes. So I just submerge it in the lead. Let it freeze onto the ladle. Look at that. Hey. But it'll warm up to temperature, and then pretty soon the lead won't stick to it. I'm going to have to turn our heat up a little bit. I can do that. Okay, one thing about temperature of the lead. Basically, the lowest temperature that you can get your mold to fill out. That's what I like to use. We've got our ladle up to temperature now. We can pour lead. Now I'm going to do something called fluxing. So when I take a little piece of wax, this is from a birthday candle, paraffin will work, just a small piece of wax, and you drop it into your lead and start stirring. And what that does is brings the last of the contaminants out. It does make smoke. You can light it on fire if you want to. But it causes the tin and the lead to go into solution because there's tin in wheel weights. They're not just pure lead. And this makes casting go much better. We've got some little bit of junk come to the top. I'm going to scrape that off. Like I said, I like to do it outside. Now my first pours I do, I am not I'm not even going to put a hook in the mold. I'll show you that in a minute. What I'm first going to do is just make sure the mold is hot. I'm going to guarantee that by pouring some lead in. And you can just pour in all the cavities to get your mold hot. We're going to wait a few seconds, see what we got. Okay, there's just some incomplete, not good mold of parts there, and that's fairly typical. That's what happens at first. Get those out. Be careful not to ding up your mold while you're getting the parts out. What I've also done is just poured lead into the side of the mold to heat it up if it's kind of cold like this one seems to be. And then I just carefully blop it back down into the pot. Safety glasses, gloves. Mold's open. I get my hook in there with my gloves on. Capture it. I let a little lead run out when I pour it. Wait a few seconds. Open my mold. That one filled out pretty good. Pull it out. Another hook. Close your mold. There's more than one way to pour. I poured from the edge last time. This time I'm just going to stick the ladle right in it and rotate the mold and the ladle together. And that kind of puts more force on the mold, the weight of the lead on top of it. That worked fine too. I'm using that towel so that they don't bump on the bench. They're kind of soft and they're hot. Here we go. Now, if you made a bad pour, which you will, this one didn't fill out very good, but it's got a hook in it. I'm just going to take it and hold it with my needle nose pliers, and I'm going to stick it back in the lead, and I'm going to melt that lead off there. So there you go. Just because you make a bad pour doesn't mean you got to throw your hooks away. But even when you think you're doing everything right, your mold's still not filling out, and your lead's starting to get kind of a scaly slag on top, that's actually tin coming out of solution, but it makes it hard to cast. So what you need to do is reflex, another little piece of wax, and get all smoky. Here's the tip for you. If you find that your mold's cooling off too fast to fill out well, which usually happens with this smallest jig head, the 1/4 ounce, every pour, maybe every other pour, fill in the cavity next to it without a hook in it. You're just filling in some lead to provide some heat to the mold. So this one has no hook. This one's got my hook in it. Hopefully that filled out. Yeah, kind of. The smaller ones are the hardest to do. Okay, we got a handful of these things now. I'm going to show you every one of them's got this big chunk of lead left over, and that's called your sprue. And while you're casting, you got everything hot, you might as well take a break, sort out and reclaim the hooks out of your bad ones, and then cut these sprues off and throw them back in the lead pot too. And all I do for that is take a pair of side cutters, and these aren't the greatest at it, but just cut it off, and then you can take a utility knife and maybe smooth it up later if you care about it that much. And I finally got one. Well, if you made it this far, guys, thank you. Next video is going to be on how to bring our jig heads to life. We're going to show you how to do powder paint, eyeballs, bucktails, various decorations. So tune in next time. Thank you.